Thank you very much to the audience which has joined us to deliberate on the budget 25-26 here with us in our Kemal room, as well as all those colleagues which are with us online. It's a very it's going to be very interesting debate for the next 1.5 hours, because this is something which everybody is focusing their intellectual capacities on in terms of discussing how the future of Pakistan's economy has been spelled out in the budget, not just for the federal, but for the provincial governments as well. Why is it important? Because generally speaking, the federal or in general, the budgets are the blueprints of how the government's priorities are reflected in terms of financial allocations. So when we compare the budgets, we try to see that what is the priority in terms of the government trying to achieve and what has been the progress over the last year. So when we discuss the budgets, technically, we are discussing the way forward, what the government is going to achieve. And the good thing this time is that the government has actually a blueprint, which is the homegrown transformation agenda, referred to as the Udan Pakistan framework. And despite the fact that we are under the IMF program, in which we don't have that much leverage, the government has tried its best to sort of mold the fiscal allocation priorities in terms of that particular agenda. There are shortcomings. We are not saying that it's perfect. It is still a long way to go about. And this is how the structural transformation actually takes place. But still, the good thing is that we can actually read the budget document with a perspective. So what I've done for today is that I'm going to quickly present some slides just to feel on board that we are discussing the budget figures. Then I prepared certain questions for our audience, the panelists, which has certain specialities, not just by their qualifications, but by expertise. And that is what generally we expect as well at forums like this, that we would like to have the first hand knowledge in terms of how the policies are being delivered. So we are very honored today to have a very distinguished panel with us, and I'll briefly give their introduction. Technically speaking, they don't need introduction. They are known figures in terms of their affiliation and their work, but still to talk about them, we have with us Dr. Ali Salman, who's the Executive Director Prime. Ali Salman has been very helpful to PIDE in the sense that we have collaborated in a number of projects. The most recent one was on the tax commission, which was completed last year. Then we have Dr. Safdar Sohail, who has been actually PIDE's part to a greater extent when especially the CPEC Center of Excellence was developed. He has not just mentored us, but also helped us to frame certain institutions. He's presently the Executive Director, SPRC, as well as he's offering a number of consulting services in various ministries on different aspects of commerce-related industrial policy. Then we have Dr. Hafsa Hina, who's our own from PIDE. She's currently the head of Department for the Public Policy and Development. Then we have with us online, if he can also confirm to us, Mr. Ghulam Mustafa Qazi Saab, who is the President, Islamabad ICMA chapter. Ghulam Mustafa Saab, are you with us online? Can you confirm, please?
Yes, I'm here. My
Okay.
mic was muted, so now
Okay.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for being with us. Then we have on behalf of Nasser Qureshi Saab, who's President ICCI. He couldn't unfortunately make it because of some leg injury problem, and he has recommended Mr. Ramzan Saab, who is leading tax expert working with the chamber on a number of issues, and we are fortunate to have with him here. We are also expecting, but yet he has not arrived, Senior Vice President of the Islamabad Chamber of Commerce, um, CEO of Mahmood Opticals, but unfortunately he has not arrived yet because he was in a meeting at the chambers. So to begin with, as I said that I've prepared a very small presentation, and I'll quickly just glance some numbers to bring all of us on board. Then we'll have formal discussion with our panel. Budgets are never read without a context. If you look at the growth framework of Pakistan, unfortunately, we had the boom and bust spells. But in the most recent times, unfortunately, we are seeing that our economic growth is actually falling. It's not that much stable, but at the same time, we are seeing episodes in which even the growth has turned negative. So, especially for the last 2 years, it was not just the economic growth, but also the inflation which was witnessed by the economy. So, when you are setting up the budgetary priorities, you have to ensure that there should be some drivers to growth. It should not be just for the fiscal stabilization. There has to be some elements which can actually protect the growth. So, this is something which the current budget was set about. And the idea which the government has taken up is that they are looking forward for long-term stabilization and reforms path, because without these two elements, the boom and bust cycle would never go down. We are fortunate that the inflation has dropped down from a cumulative of 60% for the last two outgoing years. Current account is in surplus, although the diagnosis, if you go in detail, the surplus is not that much sustainable. And the good thing is that the budget has come out with certain reforms on the tariff side, which we think is going to further stagger this. Tax collection has reached 12 trillion plus, and that is something which is very marvelous given the state of the economy. The FBR's performance has been good. There had been a fiscal pact which has been made by the provinces and the federation, which shows a kind of a joint economic agenda which the provinces are following. Exchange rate is stable. Stock market has reached tremendous heights. There was locks just 2 days ago as well. But there are concerns as well. For example, poverty estimates which were given by World Bank shows a very bleak picture. Although PIDE has done their own analysis and they have challenged that figure, the actual figures are a bit less, but still very worrisome. 30% is almost one third of the population. And LSM is something which we are still looking forward in terms of not picking up as expected. As I mentioned, the good thing about this budget is that we can read it with a perspective. So we can see the priorities which has been set, especially in terms of the development spending, focusing on high impact and near completion infrastructure initiatives, water security, human capital. The social sector support has been increased, and the overall reforms orientation is there in the government circles, whether it's related to the institutional reforms, digitization, or spending through frameworks like Udan Pakistan. Now, this is a picture which is prepared by Adil Najm, everybody knows. But it gives a picture in terms of where we were in 24-25. And he has also given a picture in terms of where we are in 25-26. So amazingly, if you see the total spending by the government, then it has actually not increased. If you see the federal budget in terms of the current allocation, 17 trillion. Last year, it was 18 trillion. But if you see the net of interest spending, then definitely we have increased our spending. But I have a good news for you as well. And Ali Salman maybe would be talking more about the taxation side, that the FPR's general perception they are not collecting has been beaten. And we have come out with a new figure that actually the FBR is collecting more. So what we think that the FBR's tax collection to the GDP ratio, most recently in 2023, it was close to 14%. This year, they came out with a figure of 5.8 trillion in the economic survey related to tax expenditures, but they have recalled it, and now they are saying that it's close to 2.3. So if you take that also into account, then the FBR's tax to GDP ratio to us is close to 12%. And why do we say that? Because there is an element of tax expenditures, which we call as the concessions, the grants, subsidies, which are given through the taxation side. So that is a kind of a tax which we on our own are letting go. So we think that that should also be included while we are saying that how much tax has been collected, because that's the tax which we have foregone our own self. So technically speaking, the total collection last year, 2024, was not the same which was mentioned, rather it's even higher, and it's all across the uh, taxes, not just the income tax. So given this scenario, what we have done is that we have prepared a set of questions which are not just in numbers, rather than we are trying to understand the processes or trying to debate out that what actually has been delivered in the budget and what good can be made out of it. What I'll do is that I'll quickly have certain number of questions from the esteemed panelists, where we would like to have their opinion, informed opinion, and to also sort of give नहीं बस खत्म presentation बेशक बंद कर give us their opinion about what we see the budget about and what their perspective is. So I'll start off by Ali, since we have just talked that in the recent budgetary discussions also, the expenditures are never discussed. It's always the tax side. So I am guessing that you would also be interested on the tax side. So I'll start off with Dr. Ali Salman. And what I'm going to ask specifically from him is that since from the um, kind of the budgetary perspective which is coming out, that the focus is on economic growth. But in his opinion, does it really give us that impetus? For example, the elite capture, the regressive taxation, and more specifically, integrating their expenditures with a framework which is the government's own Udan framework. So, what is his perspective in terms of this normative sense which is coming out from the budget, that it's a pro growth, and what he thinks is the actual budget about? Over to you. So I'll also request that if you can like give in the shortest possible way answers to our questions, so that we can cover a breadth of questions from our panelists.
Thank you, Dr. Mahmood. Thank you to PIDE. Thank you, Vice Chancellor Dr. Nadeem. It's great to be here again. And so just to jump on directly, I think it's very clear to me that this budget is an exercise for consolidation. I think it is almost a consensus. This is not a pro-growth budget. In the IMF program, obviously, that is not the main target. The main target is to reduce the fiscal deficit and to maximize the revenue and to plug the the loopholes which exist. That is the thrust of the budget. But I think going on the broader themes which Mahmood you mentioned is like this elite capture is a very popular term that we often use. And also you talked about Udan Pakistan program. So first of all, on elite capture, I have I've seen two possibly contradictory trends here in the budget, not in this budget, but generally in all the budget. You see, first of all, we like to bash elite. Like, elite bashing is also a thing. But if you look at our income tax structure, look at the tax rates. Yep. Look at the super tax. Look at the surcharge on the high tax, high income earners. These super taxes were introduced as temporary measures some years ago, but it has become practically a part of the tax code. Effective taxation rate is anywhere between 50% to 70% on large scale manufacturing concerns, which are actually in the formal sector. And those are the sort of elite companies, if you like. So we are taxing the elite heavily, but we are still not capturing it actually in that way, and that is counterproductive. That is something a view which we have in the context of flat taxation, and also the work which we did with PIDE. We have been saying it, the tax rates are too high. On the other hand, I think on a positive note, another form of elite capture, which this the other side, is, is the tariff structure, the import tariff structure, additional custom duties and all that. So heavy protection has been, part of our tariff policy. And Dr. Safdar will have definitely much more to say as one of the authors of tariff or trade policies in at least in the recent past. But in my view, that has also allowed, certain elites to function under protection. And it's good to see, I'm pleased to see that at least the government has made a very clear commitment and a roadmap to reduce the tariff rates, to do away with the regulatory duties, to do away with the additional custom duties. There's a discussion whether it is, it's done too ambitiously, too realistically. So there can be a debate. But at least that movement is clear, and that is something I definitely welcome. And that would help in opening the economy to the competition. I think that there will be other factors, obviously, but if you look at that measure in the budget, this is certainly good news. And my last quick point at this stage is, I was looking at Uran Pakistan document and just reading out a quote which is relevant to this discussion. It says that broaden the tax base, simplify tax procedures, strengthen tax enforcement through technology, promote tax awareness, ensure transparency. So this is through progressive taxation. I think all of these points are something which we will agree with, except, of course, there is no mention and no reference of tax rates, which, how and, what is the direction. So I think on this, Uran is rather silent or vague, and perhaps more specific policy direction can be added as we go along. And again, I don't see any movement in the budget, any meaningful movement in this budget towards that realization that how high tax rates are penalizing economic growth, economic activity in general.
Perfect. So we agree that maybe the direction is right, but the significance or the movement in terms of whether we would be able to achieve our targets adequately still needs a lot of homework. And that is something which generally everybody agrees with. Specifically from the taxation side, since we have experience in terms of working with the FBR, there are lots of policies which needs to be thought over again, and how ease of doing business can be created to achieve the dreams. But from the same context which Ali Salman has mentioned, now I would like to move to Dr. Safdar Sohail, because what we think is that until unless we kind of use our resources, normally students we teach that there is a potential. So from our perspective, if you compare with the regional countries or countries with similar level of per capita incomes, there is a lot of potential on the trade side. The tariff policy does give us some hope that maybe in future it's going to deliver on that. But I would like to see your take on it. That is Pakistan really transiting towards that export-led growth model? And can we think that this budget basically gives us that flavor where we can see that the 5 E's framework within the Udan Pakistan is going to materialize through policies, commerce policy, or the tariff policy currently? What's your perspective on that?
It's like a homecoming. I joined PIDE as additional director 4th January 2016.
Yeah.
So 9.5 years, the time flies. Nice memories, always interacting with all the colleagues, Dr. Mahmood, Dr. Nasir, and others who are here. Even at that time, Dr. Nadeem and myself, we were working together. So good to see him here, and wish you well on assuming this august responsibility, and at the same time playing a critical role at the Planning Commission at the Ministry of Planning and Development, particularly through the context of Udan. Now, Dr. Mahmood, coming to the question, which is important in this sense, and here I would be, it would more kind of a conversation with the researchers and students here. The economy is on a recovery path. Momentum is there. that is why there was an enhanced interest in the budget in terms of its direction, in terms of taking the momentum forward. And as we have been in context of austerity, so people have been looking at this budget from that perspective also, that how do we go forward. Now, budget to an extent gives a direction, particularly for those policy direction changes which need funding. But that is one aspect. When we say that international trade can develop with the help of policy and as a help of market-driven consideration. So when it comes to the policy, these are funded policies which would come either in the federal budget, provincial budgets, Export Development Fund, PSDP. And then there is the reform context. Now, that reform context is important to understand that there are at least 5 major policies which have been worked at and announced during the past few months. And all of those 5 policies put exports as a #1 priority of the government, including, to start with, let's say, UDAN. Tariff policy, we all saw very recently that Minister of Finance said it, that the reason that we are doing this massive, I would say, very ambitious tariff policy, I'll come to that as my friend has pointed out, to that too. And then if you look at the Prime Minister's Prime Minister Office's activity, SIFC's activity, and this ETAIP, which is there, again, they are very loud and clear that the objective even of the new industrial policy is again the exports. So we have all these policies there. In that context, I would say that the forthcoming strategic trade policy framework is a logical last step, that all these announcements are there, all these policies, investment policies, of course, we always say that the real purpose of facilitating investment is to enhance exports. And now the provincial, we know that at least 2 provinces have formal industrial policies in place and a host of investment policies. And they're also now talking about exports. Government of Punjab has actually allocated significant funds for export development also. So if exports have to be an engine of growth in Pakistan, then this is a valid question that you have raised, that whether all these policies reflect that. I would not say it a change. Exports have been important. The PM has given an ambitious target. We know the role of trade deficits in these boom-bust cycles. This is a kind of a major reinforcement, one would say, or restating, and an announcement to kind of give a very big push to the exports. Now, if we look at UDAN as the major document, exports #1 priority, fine. But what do we have in PSDP? And what do we have in the national budget? No major change, I would say. Well, that doesn't mean that the priorities of PSDP are not right, in the sense that concluding high priority projects is also important. But the funding of the major change, if we want to have that as we announce, so it is not only the federal budget to look at, we need to look at the provincial budgets and ADBs also, where there is more money available in that sense also. And remembering that we are in an IMF program, so we cannot be that ambitious in terms of financing. We already are stuck, as you have yourself pointed out, in some such subsidies which are so sticky that we are not able to get rid of them, and many of them have been given in the name of exports. For me, the policy direction is very clear that this schizophrenic practice of taking export-oriented industries separately and other manufacturing separately needs to end. And I think tariff policy is a big step towards that direction. So if your manufacturing for the domestic needs to create the quality surpluses for exports also, then the whole perspective changes. There, I think if this is the national priority, that we should enhance expenditure effectiveness because of the IMF constraints, which are okay, which we have accepted, and then be very conscious in promoting frugal innovation and mobilizing public investment, but in a very well thought out method. I would not like to judge on that because we're talking about the future. I hope that that would be the case. So now the work that we are doing, I am advising Ministry of Commerce on the next strategic trade policy framework. So we are starting where all these 5 documents and Prime Minister's announcements are leaving us. So we are not, the trade policy statement is already there. So we don't need any fresh trade policy statement. What we need is to make Ministry of Commerce and strategic trade policy framework as an engine, as a vehicle which can take the whole momentum forward. So there, we are using the word pivots for that, Dr. Nadeem, that we need to reorganize our. So first major pivot is essentially greening. That not only that we have CBAM coming, not only that the burden of environmental pollution and climate change is becoming so heavy. Greening is the way to modernize our manufacturing processes under a single undertaking of greening and modernization. So that would bring the productivity as well as would be reducing the environmental burden. How would that happen? Now that is, I fear we don't have time here, but that's one major. The next is AI. What kind of role would or AI should play, not only in creating innovativeness in the economy, but in itself, AI is also an export system also. The third one is the focus on regional trade development. The global dynamics of international trade are in front of us all. The friends shoring, reshoring, sustainable supply chains, food security. Now, everybody is giving more importance to its own regional options. And the way we are using regional trade is a trade with our neighbors and the trade with the regional trading blocks that we have, including such trading blocks, such blocks which right now are not giving trade the central importance, like SCO, for example. SCO does have an aspect of investment in trade, but that is not yet the main concern. And then a focus on the intermediate products, which is extremely important if we want to become a part of the regional or global supply chains. My last point is that the policies open the doors, but how the impact and channels are worked out, that is up to the institutions like PIDE to work at. Now, I have asked so many people who have worked on the tariff policy that identify the tariff lines where you are reducing the tariff and identify the channel through which the additionality of exports would accrue to Pakistan by that precise lowering down of tariff. Now, if we are able to do that, and that's an idea, Dr. Nadeem, that we should work out together, that would enable Ministry of Commerce to bring in supplementary or complementary export enhancement measures to strengthen the objectives of trade policy, tariff policy. Now, getting rid of RDs and ARDs is not that big a problem. and overall improving the quality of your tariff applications and cleaning it is already desirable. But what exactly are we going to do in terms of additionality of exports through tariff policy? That needs to be very clearly spelled out. Thank you.
Thank you. You have very rightly identified, and we also believe at PIDE that this is the crux, that it's not just going to be focused on the export industry, but it's going to be the domestic commerce and the overall industry setup, which one needs to actually take into account. And PIDE has actually produced a report on domestic commerce as well as on the productivity, which clearly has the similar kinds of messages which we can take forward. Now, from the same perspective, now I would like to switch to the ICCI representative, because now we are into a domain where the government side has spelled out its plan, that what do they want to achieve at the end of the day. But when it comes to the private sector, then we have to really understand that are they also the stakeholder towards these recommendations? Are they ready, like Dr. Safdar has just mentioned, that can we sort of predict that if these things are implemented in latent spirit, then definitely we are going to achieve our objective. So from that perspective, given you represent the private sector, we have the micro, small industries, which has actually shown the potential even to the extent of exports as well. But in your opinion, does this actually budget gives us that support and frameworks which the private sector can take forward and deliver on what it is expected from?
Thank you very much, Dr. Saab, and thank you all for inviting us here. The budget is like, as a business representative, business community representative, we see the budget in different perspectives. Like one is policy of the government with respect to growth of the country. And then the policies for the businessmen for ease of doing business, incentives, and the taxation measures are especially are seen very keenly because the business community consider it very important, because they want a free environment. The business community overall want a free environment where there are no hurdles, there are no unscrupulous practices among the tax authorities and the bureaucracy structure of the country. And unfortunately, in Pakistan, for the last many years, we could not achieve those targets. Like अगर हम करप्शन की बात करें तो उसमें कोई खातर खा हम लोगों ने कोई अपने आप को इम्प्रूव नहीं किया. तो उसके साथ हम अगर टैक्सेशन मेयर्स में देखें तो देयर इज़ नो पॉलिसी कंसिस्टेंसी. अगर हम हर साल देखते हैं कि देयर आर टैक्स में अपने रेवेन्यू का टारगेट पूरा करने के लिए टू प्लीज़ आईएमएफ, या आईएमएफ के साथ ज़ाहिर डील है हमारी, तो उसको करने के लिए व्हाट वी डू इज़ हम एग्जिस्टिंग लास्ट ईयर की टैक्सेशन को देखते हैं कि वेयर वी कलेक्टेड, और इसमें अगर टैक्स नेट ब्रॉडन तो नहीं हो रहा उसमें, आल्दो के देयर आर नंबर ऑफ फाइलर्स जिसको हम कहते हैं एटीएल लिस्ट में, वो 7 मिलियन तक चले गए हैं. बट एक्चुअली द टैक्स कौन पे कर रहे हैं? जो ग्रे इकोनॉमी में पहले थे वो अभी भी ग्रे इकोनॉमी में है. बाकी जो एग्जिस्टिंग टैक्स पेयर्स हैं उनके ऊपर देखा जाता है कि अच्छा जी ये लोग इतना टैक्स दे रहे हैं. टैक्स रेट जैसे सेल्स टैक्स रेट इज़ द हाईएस्ट इन द रीजन, 18% 2 साल पहले कर दिया गया. वो भी कॉस्ट ऑफ डूइंग बिजनेस में आ जाता है, बिकॉज पास ऑन पूरा नहीं कर सकता बिजनेसमैन क्योंकि ग्रे इकोनॉमी की वजह से. देन दूसरी साइड पे अगर हम देखते हैं तो टैक्स रेट्स वो भी बिजनेस प्लानिंग में बहुत इम्पोर्टेंट होते हैं. उसमें भी हर साल कुछ ना कुछ प्लस माइनस कर दिया जाता है, जिससे बिजनेसमैन डेफिनेटली डिस्टर्ब होता है. तो ये बहुत सारी इस तरह की जो पॉलिसीज़ हैं उसकी जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन साइड है सर, वहाँ पे असल में प्रॉब्लम है. इम्प्लीमेंटेशन साइड पे हम कैसे इम्प्रूवमेंट ला सकते हैं, कैसे रिफॉर्म्स ला सकते हैं. जो रेलेवेंट डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं जो बिजनेसेस को डील करते हैं, फ्रॉम दी अप्रूवल, जब कोई भी बिजनेस इस्टेब्लिश होता है उसकी अप्रूवल से लेकर देन उसकी ऑन गोइंग ऑपरेशंस जो हैं वहाँ तक, और फिर मुख्तलिफ प्रोविंशियल एंड सेंट्रल डिपार्टमेंट्स हैं जो कि बिज़नेस को वॉच कर रहे होते हैं, बिज़नेस के ऊपर ऊपर वो ओवरसाइट कर रहे होते हैं। तो ये तमाम के तमाम जो है इसमें इम्प्रूवमेंट नहीं हुई, जिसकी वजह से बिजनेसमैन, जो रियल बिजनेसमैन है, ईमानदार बिजनेसमैन है, वो परेशान है। तो इन चीज़ों में इम्प्रूवमेंट के लिए गवर्नमेंट मेजर्स कैसे ले सकती है, इसमें भी काइंडली सजेस्ट करें। हमें सबको करना चाहिए। बाकी अभी रिसेंट जो बजट आया है इसमें टैक्सेशन में जैसे मैंने बताया कि 18% जो इंक्रीज़ है वो उसी में से ही बहुत सारी चीज़ों में से निकाले गए हैं। लास्ट ईयर भी इसमें ड्रास्टिकल इंक्रीज़ हुई थी, ऑल्दो के वो टारगेट्स पूरे नहीं हो सके। 12 ट्रिलियन तक पहुंचे, 13 ट्रिलियन था, अभी 14 ट्रिलियन हो गया है टारगेट टैक्स रेवेन्यू का। तो जैसे आप ये देखें कि जैसे अली सुलेमान साहब ने कहा कि इफ़ेक्टिव रेट इज़ 50 to 70%। अगर आप इतना टैक्स किसी पे लगाएंगे एक इकोनॉमी में, जो रियल बिजनेसमैन है जो टैक्स देना चाहता है, और कुछ ग्रे साइड है जो टैक्स नहीं देते, तो 50 to 70% अपने प्रॉफिट का, हार्ड अर्न मनी का, वो गवर्नमेंट को डेफिनेटली एक रिस्पॉन्सिबिलिटी तो है, वो कैसे दे सकता है। देन उसका भी दिल करता है कि वो भी कुछ टैक्स एवेजन कर ले। जब वो टैक्स एवेजन करता है तो उसके साथ फिर बाकी जो इम्प्लीमेंटर्स हैं वो भी मिल जाते हैं, और इस तरीके से बहुत सारा टैक्स रेवेन्यू लॉस होता है। अगर टोटल देखा जाए तो पोटेंशियल इज़ देयर, लेकिन एक मशीनरी की वजह से हमारी जो इम्प्लीमेंटेशन पॉलिसी है या इम्प्लीमेंटर्स हैं, उनकी वजह से हम बहुत ज़्यादा 5-6 हज़ार अरब तक तो मेरा ख्याल है कि हम लॉस करते हैं। तो उनको कैसे कैटर करना है, इंपोर्ट स्टेज लगा लें आप, उसके अलावा स्मगलिंग लगा लें, अंडर वैल्यूएशन लगा लें, तो वो सारी चीज़ें हैं जो कि उसको एब्जॉर्ब करती हैं, जो हम असल में टैक्स जो कलेक्ट करना है उसको नहीं कर सकते। तो उनके ऊपर देखना चाहिए। बाकी बहुत सारी जैसे टैक्स, सोलर पे टैक्स लगा था, वो सुना है कि कोई रिड्यूस और हो रहा है।
वापस हो गया।
उसके अलावा सर्विसेज पे जो टैक्स है, सर्विसेज सेक्टर एक बहुत बड़ा सेक्टर है, जो सर्विस प्रोवाइडर्स हैं स्पेशली थ्रू एंटिटीज सर्विस प्रोवाइड कर रहे हैं। अभी आप 15% उनके ऊपर विद होल्डिंग है। 15% मीन्स अगर किसी का नेट प्रॉफिट 20% भी है तो मीन 70% उसके ऊपर, 75% टैक्स नेट प्रॉफिट्स पे बनता है। तो हाउ इट इज़ पॉसिबल कि कोई टैक्स एवेजन ना करे। तो रेट्स ही इतने हाई हैं कि उसको दैट आर प्रोन टू टैक्स एवेजन। तो थोड़ी सी रैशनलाइजेशन करनी चाहिए सो दैट के एक्चुअल टैक्स गवर्नमेंट को इससे ज़्यादा आ सकता है। ईज देनी चाहिए और उस पर काम करना चाहिए कि हाउ वी कैन कम्बैट विद द थिंग्स जो कि ऑन ग्राउंड इम्प्लीमेंटर स्पेस पे हो रही हैं।
ठीक, बहुत
थैंक यू सो
शुक्रिया।
मच।
This is what Ali Salman and I used to talk about, that we should actually think about maybe owning a particular tax stream and think about maybe simulating or creating the nudges where we can improve the collection as well as give some ease to the businesses also in terms of doing how they're doing their businesses. So I'll now quickly shift to Ghulam Mustafa Saab if he's online and available with us because we have talked too much on the Texas side. So since he is representing the ICMA, so I would like to take his perspective because in terms of looking at the overarching frameworks, for example, the Public Financial Management Act, thinking about the Treasury Single Rules, the amended fiscal responsibility and debt limitation law telling us that how the debt management functions are going to be improved, and so many other checks and balances which are there in the public sector. But still, if you look at the way budgets are presented, we end up having supplementary grants. We have spendings which are actually not included at the very outset in the budget. Rather, they appear after the contingent liabilities has matured or they're given as grants and subsidies and so many other things. So from his perspective of the ICMA, where we actually look forward in terms of the accounting helps, that how the budget reflects that whether the things has improved in terms of how the public expenditures are being carried out, or still there are ways and means through which it can further be improved. So what's your take on it, sir?
Thank you very much. Yes, as my predecessors indicated a lot on this, but I'll just briefly state the current budget with respect to the questions you have raised. Still, elite capture seems to be there in the budget. Many of the elites are still untaxed or undertaxed. Although the agriculture taxation has been implemented through the provinces, but still there's a lot to say about how the profits will be calculated and how the accounting will be done in this sector. On the large scale retail chains or the tier 1 retailers, the government tried a lot during the last 3-4 years to to take them into the online integration of the point of sale. But still, very small number of retailers are there. And with the recent change in the taxation, and SRO was issues where the uh, everyone, the corporate and non-corporate, everyone has to now integrate and issue e-invoicing, which seems to be impossible at this stage because of very small and diverse group of businesses. Then there is a real estate business where there were some promises before the budget, but you see that the uh, the relief given to the purchaser of the property has been shifted to the seller of the property. So it seems that there is almost no change. So tax privileges for selected sectors continue while enforcement on the powerful lobbies is largely symbolic. Then regressive taxation reliance is continued. We have largely we are focused on indirect taxes, whether in terms of sales tax and or withholding tax regime, which is not in relation to the income the sector earns. As Mia Sab said earlier, that the withholding taxes have been increased in this budget. The short-term thinking of the government continues. So if we talk about the services, the rate of taxation for the corporate sector has been increased from 9% to 15%, and for the others from 11% to 15%. So it means that they are thinking that the service sector is earning net profit more than 50 to 60%, which is not the fact. So if we are paying taxes to the range of 75% of our incomes, that is the first thing that the evasion comes in, that a person, he cannot afford to pay this much of tax. Then some relief has been provided to the salaried individual. But there is a lack of uh, focusing on the long-term planning. So when we discuss about the Udan Pakistan, that is the transformational vision of the government. It was focused on human development, human capital investment, decentralization, and local governance, market reforms, and inclusive growth. So the taxation policy should always be linked with the growth of the economy, growth of the industry. You have seen that the large scale manufacturer didn't perform well during the last fiscal year, and we have seen a reduction in its growth. But we need to focus on education, health services, but they are a ceremonial. They could not attract the attention of the government in view of the fact that still 38% of the students are out of school. Then local governments are still absent, and fiscal empowerment is not delegated to the local governments. Then we need to have land reforms, SME documentation, and gender-focused budgeting, which have not been meaningfully pursued in this budget. In order to align the budget with the Udan Pakistan VN, then we need to have certain reforms. We need to do away with the certain exemptions and make wealth-based taxation central, expand social mobility pathways, enforce transparency, which is still lacking. And after every budget, you see a lot of SROs coming in, which actually make a sense that the planning of the government was not so effective. In view of this, actually, if we look at this budget, we see that there is a lack of reforms, lack of understanding of the economy and the development of the economy, lack of any policy for the industry, and lack of any policy for the exports. So there's a lot of things we can infer from this budget. Instead, there are threats in this budget of arrest, of fraud, and so many things. So we need to look look at the taxpayers from a friendly side. I always talk about the relationship of the government, of the tax taker to the tax government as a friend, as a client. And client needs, once the client pays your fees, and they also should be, their problems should be taken care of. So this budget needs a lot of reforms. Long-term planning is missing, and this should be at least a mid-term policy should always prevail, and we should look for 5 to 10 years so that the
Thank you.
consistent policy should be adopted.
Thank you, sir. Now, quickly coming to Dr. Hafsa, because all that debate finally rests into what we are expecting from the economy impact of these budgets. And generally, what we see from the growth diagnostic side, we see that it's basically the saving investment gap and the current account drags down in terms of our growth perspective as well. But at the same time, we are also under an IMF program. So what do you think that would this conundrum actually solve, where we have certain stability restrictions, our growth agendas, and the structural issues in terms of how the private sector thinks about what the government is doing and what is their responsibility? So what is your take on it?
Thank you, Mahmood Saab. देखिए, if we look at the IMF program is always to help the countries to deal the serious economic problems like low foreign exchange reserves, huge budget deficits, or high debt. But it always give loans with conditions like rise the taxes, reduce the subsidies, or improve governance. So if you think that IMF bring stability, so yes, IMF reforms will bring stability, but it brings stability only in the short run. The actual problem is that whether we continue these reforms in the long run or not. If you look in case of Pakistan, we do reforms under the pressure of IMF, but we stopped halfway. So, and that's why we have done agreements with IMF over 20 times. So this pattern shows that we cannot believe that the IMF reforms bring stabilities until or unless we make a long-term reform in everyday policy. So definitely the long-term success is depend upon the political will or public support. Otherwise, we will end up with the same problem.
So, but is there a ray of hope as a macroeconomist?
Yes, if you look at that, the government is focusing on the Udan Pakistan. It's a long-term reforms. We need a continuity of policies. So without giving a proper base to industrial sector, we just relying on these IMF, we cannot grow.
Okay. Now, quickly, Ali, since you are now too much engaged in terms of the taxation side as well, and generally, by and large, what we have heard from the ICMA side and the ICCI side, that there are problems in terms of the tax policy and tax administration. So what we generally see is that the tax avoidance or even the tax compliance is a function of trust on one side in the government, and on the other side, the enforcement capacity of the tax collecting authority. That actually determines that how much the tax is going to be collected, along with how the policy is set in terms of the marginal ability to pay and others. So, but from your critical analysis, what you think that is there still some bases which we are unable to collect, or is it a myth? Because we talk too much about it that few sectors are paying too much and the others are not paying. Is it the enforcement problem? Is it the compliance problem in terms of the private sector, which is not willingly trusting the government on the other side, or the tax morality of how the things are happening? So how would we solve this issue?
I think the simple answer to your question, it's a mix of all these factors. So obviously, Mr. Burkin, obviously, as I said, I will not going to repeat, the policy is a problem. The tax policy remains a problem. And what I see that government in general, also multilateral institutions, are just looking at it from an administrative point of view, an enforcement point of view. Now, there is a part of the problem as well. I mean, so they are finding technology as a solution. But technology cannot solve the problem created by policy, because tax creates incentives and disincentives. So I think that part is very clear that we have to create the incentive structure right. अब इसमें एक तो चीज़ मैं चाहूँगा कि थोड़ा से FBR की साइड के ऊपर मैं एक बात ज़रूर कहना चाहूँगा, वो ये कि while saying that policy is not right, लेकिन FBR has to be taken as a sort of a villain of peacetime, right? So enforcement is their job. If policy is on the right side, so if FBR is something to be, जिस तरह US में भी है और जहाँ भी है, तो FBR से डरना ही चाहिए अगर पॉलिसी साइड के ऊपर है. लेकिन ऑब्वियसली वो भी हम पॉलिसी के और हम इतना उसके अंदर है, एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन में इतना फंसे हुए हैं कि मैं आई कैन नॉट क्लेम दैट काइंड ऑफ मेक दैट काइंड स्टेटमेंट. इसमें जो अगर हम स्पेसिफिकली देखें ना, जो नंबर्स आए हैं, इस दफ़ा आई गॉट प्रिविलेज टू आल्सो अटेंड द स्टैंडिंग कमेटी मीटिंग्स ऑन फाइनेंस एंड रेवेन्यू पोस्ट बजट. उसमें बड़ी डिटेल से फर्स्ट टाइम डिस्कशन हुई. One of the things which the FBR actually mentioned was that in this budget, and I also agreed with that, that the tax revenue target is more realistic than the last time. And there are three sort of contributing factors towards it. First of all is this element of autonomous growth. Inflation is now sort of normalized, और हम जिस तरह पहले नीचे गए थे अब थोड़ी सी ऊपर जाएंगे, 7% के ऊपर है. And I think so there is an element of autonomous growth. So जो अगर आप उसकी बात करें कि 2 ट्रिलियन का जो इन्होंने एडिशनल रेवेन्यू दिया है वो कहाँ से आ रहा है, उसके अंदर जो एस्टिमेशन आई है वो कोई 1200 बिलियन रुपीज़ इज कमिंग फ्रॉम autonomous growth. And about 400 billion is due to enforcement. So this is something again, I think this is important, and I as an observer of tax policy administration, I see that can lead to results. And the new tax policy proposals is about 300 billion rupees out of this 200. So that is the sort of calculus. I think this is an improved calculus from the last year. And I think that if we follow that, probably talking strictly about tax collection, so this seems to be on the target. अब ये कि spending कैसे होती है, उसके अंदर क्या issues आते हैं, वो एक दूसरी बहस है. लेकिन I think ये enforcement और इस तरफ हम बेहतरी की तरफ जा सकते हैं.
Quickly, Ramzan Sahab, just to add on to this aspect of enforcement, since you are from the private sector and the President ICM has also mentioned that it's too difficult for e-invoicing, whereas the FBR is thinking that every retailer should be integrated. They should have a POS. There should be a complete track and trace system. There should be fully digitalized payment and monitoring system. The FBR should have an access to all sorts of information which is available. So why isn't the private sector willing to move to that level? Can we do it? Or it's never going to happen because
I just
if
give
there's no
answer.
solution. Yeah.
I just give answer that in 2018 or 19, government started this digitalization or online integration with FPR. They started from the sector of restaurants and all that, and the tier 1 retailers then later on came in. तो उसमें अभी तक जो कामयाबी है दैट इज अराउंड 70,000। एक जो फिगर्स मैंने कुछ दिन पहले कोई महीना पहले बिजनेस रिकॉर्डर में पढ़ी थी कि अराउंड 70,000 रिटेलर्स रेस्टोरेंट्स कुड बी इंटीग्रेटेड विद एफपीआर सिस्टम। जबकि इनकी जो तादाद है या नंबर्स हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा हैं। आई मीन दे माइट बी अराउंड 200,000 इतने होंगे। तो ये एक फेज़ अभी कंप्लीट नहीं हुआ था। देन गवर्नमेंट अनाउंस्ड के उसमें जो बैक एंड पे डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर्स हैं एंड मैन्युफैक्चरर ऑफ एफएमसीजीज हैं उनको भी इंटीग्रेट करना है। दैट केम इन 2024। उनकी भी इंटीग्रेशन नहीं एनफोर्स हो सकी। देन अभी 2 months बैक they announced कि every sales tax registered person need to be integrated with FPR online system digital invoicing हो। अब सिस्टम कोलैप्स कैसे करता है, रिटेलिएशन कैसे आती है जब आप एक ही चीज़ इतने बल्क बहुत सारे लोगों पे कर लेंगे तो देन रिटेलिएशन आएगी। रिटेलिएशन जब आएगी तो कलेक्टिवली मुख्तलिफ ट्रेडर्स की और सारे लोग जो हैं वो इकट्ठे हो जाएंगे और उसके ख़िलाफ़ एहतजाज करेंगे। जैसे ताजर दोस्त स्कीम आई, अराउंड 10 मिलियन से ज़्यादा टैक्स पेयर्स उसमें फॉल करते हैं जो कि ताजर दोस्त स्कीम में आने थे लेकिन नहीं आ सके। उसमें कोई फ्यू थाउजेंड रजिस्टर हुए, उसमें भी रिटेलिएशन आई। तो ये एक जो रिटेलिएशन है फ्रॉम द बिजनेस साइड या बाकी जो पाकिस्तान में है, ये एक रूल ऑफ लॉ की पाकिस्तानी जो हम एज ए बहैसियत कौम हम रूल ऑफ लॉ को ओवरराइड करते आए हैं और हम बहुत ज़्यादा प्रोन टू लॉ यानी कि लॉ अबाइडिंग सिटीज़न नहीं है। उसकी वजह आपको मैंने बताया कि एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन साइड पे जो अनस्क्रपलस प्रैक्टिसेस हैं वो है वो जिस जिस तरह भी समझ लें आप। तो इस वजह से हम लॉ अबाइडिंग सिटीजन्स यकदम नहीं बन सकते, इसको ग्रेजुअली करना होता है। अभी भी अगर ये डिजिटल इनवॉइसिंग यकदम की है तो इसमें रिटेलिएशन आएगी और ये कभी टारगेट कंप्लीट ही नहीं हो सकेगा। तो पहला जो टारगेट था टीयर 1 का उसकी इन्फोर्समेंट कंप्लीट हो जाती। मीन अब कहते जी अभी 2-4% ही रह गए हैं। देन डिस्ट्रीब्यूटर और मैन्युफैक्चरर तक जो किया है उसमें तो इन्होंने इम्प्लीमेंटेशन की नहीं, 1 साल हो गया पूरा। और अभी ये चाह रहे हैं कि जितने रजिस्टर्ड पर्सन हैं टैक्स पेयर्स हैं वो सारे के सारे इंटीग्रेट हो जाएं। तो इसमें कैपेसिटी एंड रिटेलिएशन और एडमिनिस्ट्रेशन इन सब का जो मिक्स है उसको लेके चलेंगे तो ये सिस्टम फेल होगा। मीन कई साल लग जाएंगे। तो कुछ चीज़ आहिस्ता आहिस्ता कोई भी टारगेट आपने अचीव करना है टू यू डिवाइड इट इनटू सब टारगेट्स। मीन उसको छोटे छोटे टारगेट्स बनाएं डेली बेसिस पे, महीने के, 2 महीनों के, 4 महीनों के। जैसे आप हम सब लोग कोई भी अपना काम करना होता है तो उसको वी डिवाइड इट इनटू स्मॉल टारगेट्स और उसके बाद फिर बड़ा टारगेट अचीव होता है। तो इसमें पता नहीं किसने उनको ये कहा है कि आप सब पे कर दें, इसका मतलब है कि ना करने वाली बात हुई। तो
शायद
जस्ट
मकसद
स्मॉल
उस-
स्मॉल टारगेट्स में अगर डिवाइड करके किया जाता तो दैट वुड हैव बीन मोर बेटर। तो इस तरीके से कोई भी पॉलिसी है आपको उसको ग्रेजुअली आप इम्प्लीमेंट करें तो दैट वुड बी मोर इफेक्टिव और उसमें आप टारगेट भी अचीव कर सकेंगे। आपकी इन्फोर्समेंट कैपेसिटी भी होगी, लोग एजुकेट भी हो जाएंगे और उस तरीके से सारा सिलसिला जो है चल पड़ेगा।
इसी सिलसिले में गुलाम मुस्तफा साहब, if you can also extend in terms of, because what the government is trying to do is to digitalize all the processes. As just mentioned, that there is an element of maybe coercion where the inspectors and evaluators are trying to take their own rents. But if you go digital, then automatically all these rents are going to go away. So what's your take on it, that what actually stops the businesses from taking this leverage that let's go digital, let's take the human interface out of it so that nobody is going to create that pressure of rent seeking on them? Is it possible? And especially from your perspective, since you guys deal with it, the role of the audits by the FBR and other things, do you think that going faceless like they tried in the case of customs and even to the extent that the sales tax and others, if they can also be converted in that kind of a system, would actually help the businesses, not just increase the revenue efficiency, but also bring some relief to the businesses as well. Is it the case?
You're right that the digitalization of the economy is the solution. And we have digitalized systems at FBR, which need to be more integrated. And the latest tools such as artificial intelligence need to be brought in to the system to find more taxpayers. But the problem is that when it comes to implementation, certain areas which are already fully computerized and integrated, but there is a room deliberately given for the mutual interaction. You know that the benefit of the digitalization is that there is no or minimal connection between the taxpayer and the tax collector. But here you see a lot of connection. They call you on a physical notices, and there comes the bad governance jump in. So we need to have a fully digitalized system so that the interaction is minimized. Second, you talked about the audit. You'll be surprised to see the provisions regarding the audit of the taxation of the taxpayers. Here comes, in case of the companies, you need to attach the audited financial statements to the FBR, and now they are talking that about this that the audit oversight board will look into the matters identified by the FBR where FBR thinks that certain audits have not been done properly. I was the part of the anomaly committee of the FBR, and we took up this and other matters as well. And we met with the chairman of FBR, and we talked about this irregularity that ICMA and ICAP have their own audit oversights in form of QCR or the disciplinary measures. And the audit oversight looks the cases where the public interest is there. The public interest companies, in case of public interest companies, the audit oversight board can jump in. But here they are trying to implement it on all companies. This is a two-tier problem. First is that you are not relying on the professional accountants who are trying to digitize the economy, who are trying to bring in new taxpayers, who are helping the governments in terms of the withholding taxes and the tax compliances, etc. And you are starting a new chapter in this area. Like Mia Sahab said that there is a problem of intent. In this area, if you open up a lot of things at the same time, then you cannot achieve any objective. So it was requested that don't try to implement everything at first phase, do it gradually. And audit is not, as you know that the lot of micro and small sector organizations are actually not documented. Their accounts are not proper. Their ERP systems are not there. So the auditors are human beings. They take up the information. They try to make the accounts of these small organizations as much as possible. And this is a continuous improvement which is coming out there. And our role, the role of the professional accountant, is to work like a bridge between the government and the taxpayers. And proudly we can say that we have achieved this objective. We have done a lot in this area, and
Excellent.
government needs to rely on us, not criticize us or not
Point well taken, sir.
on our intents. Thank you.
Excellent, excellent. Now I would like to switch to Dr. Safdar Sohail, since he has talked about how the budgets actually can reflect in terms of the gaps where we are trying to achieve higher growth through investment or productivity or export-led economy. But all that boils down to another important aspect, which is basically the human capital development, the social sector protection. So I would like to see his comment on it, or understanding of the budget, that where do we stand in terms of playing that role? Is the government now shifting towards maybe financing these gaps through private sector participation or other kinds of innovative funding models, where maybe another set of stakeholders such as the NGOs and other society organizations would come in? But at the end of the day, are we on the right path? Because given the scenarios, he's also talked about the AI as a main focus. Are we on that path where that kind of human capital development along with social protection can be achieved?
What is social policy? I think that's the starting point. If you say that social protection is equivalent to social policy, then the discussion or conversation would go in a very different direction. If you have relabeled your poverty reduction strategy papers and the expenditure, social expenditure 20 years before, now as social protection expenditure, now you see the labels, the taxonomy, which is there. For me, budget is basically an enunciation of social policy in the sense that the economic policies have social objectives. Well, what do you think what President Trump is doing? It's all social policy, primarily. If by social policy we mean all such policies which touch almost every citizen. So if that is the social policy, so there I think the connection which is missing between our social policy and economic policies, there may be many missing links, but competition policy is one of the major link. For me, competition policy, service delivery, and climate policy are social policies because they touch everybody. Service delivery, climate change, environmental protection, and competition policy. So that perspective perhaps needs to be discussed thoroughly. We have increased our social protection outlays, which is good, 20% increase in social WISP expenditure. We have brought in a lot of conditional cash transfers also. But what if our NSER is largely, how to put it, wrong? Right. If the foundation is wrong, and then you are giving the provincial governments, you see the COVID actually brought us into a pernicious cycle where the technology did help us to reach out to X million people through NSER, through banking transfers. And after that, we kind of made this NSER data sanctified, which actually has translated into the objectification of the poor in Pakistan. The kind of transfer that you are giving, if somebody says that these transfers would graduate those families out of poverty, he is joking. With these transfers, which have witnessed some increase in the current budget also, you cannot put food on the table of 7-8 member household for more than a week. So it is not even consumption smoothening in terms of food security. And then particularly the provinces have grown fascinated what we call a politics of social welfare, that you have cards for this, you have goodies for this, and large number of schemes. I'll bring another example which would perhaps illuminate. Indians say that we have brought out 600 people million people out of poverty during the last 10 years. That's the government which says. But how many people are given ration in India? With very low staple prices, 800 million people. Now, one of the data is wrong. If 600 million people have come out of poverty, so there I think these are bigger issues. These budgets, national, provincial, should be better discussed in the given context that already we are doing. But I think if Pakistan economy has been doing well, I mean, our estimate says that our average growth rate has been 6 to 7% for the last 20 years. That is the actual GDP growth. And our GDP is around $650 billion. If that is the case, then we should talk about and measure the poverty, measure the prosperity in the country. We should talk more about the wealth than we talk about the poverty, because while you talk about the poverty, you are unable to get out of the received wisdom and narratives and researches and all those things. So there, if Pakistan has become much more prosperous during the last 15, 20 years, which is the case. You go to a Tehsil headquarter and a canal you cannot buy in millions, it's in crores. So the market signals is there. There's so much money. And if you look at the populations and the urbanization happening in Pakistan, in most of the Pakistan, and the consumption patterns, how are the people coping with the inflation, with the kind of poverty that we talk about? So there, I think we need to open up the basic question, which we must, because Pakistan economy has done very well. Maybe the issue is with the distribution and the cost of accumulation and how the process of marginalization is taking place in Pakistan, and how this inequality is a graded inequality in Pakistan, and how are the people at the bottom coping with the marginalization. If they are coping through child labor, if everybody is working, if the health is compromised, if the education is compromised, and we are okay because there is no social unrest in the country, then I think the people sitting in this room particularly need to ask bigger questions and challenge the traditional wisdom that we use while analyzing poverty and equity as a subject. Thank you.
True, sir. Now I would quickly jump to Dr. Hafsa. Given the information set in the budget documents and the economic forecast, what we are expecting is that there is going to be inflation coming in from maybe the supply side. And to date, the monetary policy is also under pressure that they should further reduce the rate. At the same time, the government's borrowing is not curtailing that much, although they're reflecting from 9 trillion to maybe 800 something, 8 trillion something, but still that is a bigger value. So what do you see in the coming futures? You have a comment on this?
Just a quick, if
Yeah.
you allow me 1
Yeah.
minute, because I have to just respond quickly, just to add some spice, if you allow.
Yeah.
Spice.
I mean, Dr. Safdar was talking about the growth rates and the per capita, the numbers, the GDP. But I don't think so. We have been growing 6-7% last 20 years. I think our growth rate is falling, and it is becoming more volatile, and it is like in the very, very low numbers. I think growth
close to 3.5.
Yeah, 3.5%.
6.
Also, the GDP is not 600 billion.
That's-
It is half of it.
That's the bet. See, that's what I'm saying.
Yeah.
There must be something in that chai for you.
That is no.
There's something
Rizwan, I'm not joking.
Right, if you talk about the formal economy is right.
Use different and better measures of
Exactly.
measuring the economic activity. Use the nighttime lights. Use the urban development. What do you think? If a Tehsil headquarter has, like Sadqabad has a population of 300,000, a Tehsil headquarter, an average Tehsil headquarter and the urban settlements have multiplied by 10 times during the last 20 years. Those houses have fittings, those houses have used materials, they are using bed sheets. Who is counting those? If you count all that, Pakistan has grown massive. I'll give you one small example. The machine wash, detergents. We had hardly 40 units producing detergents in Pakistan 20 years before. Now, with the help of massive advertisement, wherever there is power, electricity, there is machine wash. Now there are more than 400 units of detergents of medium and large size. Is that economic activity in terms of industrialization catering to the domestic demand being, you see, what I'm saying is serious and based on a serious data. If we are unable to do a proper manufacturing survey for all these years, if the federal government, you see, in economic survey of Pakistan, which is the data which is more or less correct? Only large-scale manufacturing, and that also given by them, not independently verified, and agricultural data, which is largely manipulated by the provincial governments, nothing else. So, and we continue with that economic survey of Pakistan, which shows growth in construction at 4.0 for the last 10 years. Is it possible that you grow by exactly the same statistic?
Do the
year
same
year
in
and year?
livestock and
Yeah, so
but
that way,
still-
I think your reaction, which has charged me a little
I
bit,
still think there's
that is
something
the- that
So-
is the
but
problem.
that was a positive, I think,
That-
feedback.
Yeah, you see,
Over to the moderator.
Yeah. So now let's go
that
back.
that is the real problem.
I totally disagree.
We'll come back to you, sir.
Yeah, it's just not possible. The history of Pakistan's growth in the last 20 years is nowhere close to 6%.
Let-
And I'm willing to put a bet on it.
And you're
We'll do
totally false.
Then
And I'm
Dr.
also willing
Hafsa.
to put a bet on that.
Dr. Hafsa.
So my take whether the inflation come down to 7.5% or not. So if we look at the budget 25-26, I think it's a huge promises in this budget, like inflation come down at 7.5% and we will grow at the rate of 4.2%. If we look at the real scenario, we are expecting that the electricity prices will be rise by 18% to deal with the circular debt. But at the same time, the new tax imposed, that is a carbon tax, will further add a fuel in the inflation. And we are all knowing that over the last few quarters, monetary policy is expansionary. So we are expecting that the expenditure will rise and it will further increase the inflation. This is on the one side, and on the another side, if you look at the government borrowing, which is in this budget, it is promises that it will. It is not promises, but it will. Government will plan to take around 6,000 trillion from the local sources. Probably it is from the government securities. And we know that whenever the government borrow large amount of money for bank, the credit which is available for businesses will be lower or reduced. And it will further enhance the inflation rather than to cut down it. So I think, and the government assumes that the industry will grow around 6%, despite thinking that they are facing challenges like energy shortages. And in agriculture sector, on one side, we are again assuming that it will grow in this budget or in coming fiscal year by 3.5%. But if you look at the reality that the water shortages is also predicted, so it will also cut down the crops, and all this factor will lead to increase the inflation rather than to cut down.
Right. Thank you. So now, after very enlightened discussion, what we can take out from our panelists, I would like to request the audience here as well as the online guests, if they can also pitch in certain questions which can help us unpack something from the budget's perspective and the economy. But one thing I would like to request, that since we are running short of time, unfortunately, because I was not a good moderator, so your you should put questions, not comments, that we can do on maybe later on, and also mention who should be responding to your question. So we can start from Rizwan sir and then.
I'm not a question person. I'm an answer person.
That's why.
I'm an answer person. I'm not a question person. I do my question yesterday and I do my answers today. Listen, to keep it brief, I just don't think Pakistan will ever get out of its previous and current misery as long as we stay in any IMF program. The IMF, they're not your friends, okay? You have to understand that. They are particularly here for one only purpose. I give you money and I want you to pay me back. That's the bottom line. So when they come here, and they come here for a few days, and they make comments like, you are proposing us tax policies based on a Laffer curve, which we don't agree with. And then you, the Pakistanis, don't understand the ground realities. I mean, can you imagine somebody living out in Washington, D.C. and coming here for a few days telling us Pakistanis that we don't know the realities, the ground realities? Now, come on. They are not our friends. We have been with them for the last hunky-dory years, around the time when I was born. Okay, maybe around 1958 or today. And Pakistan has continuously remained in an IMF program. And you name me, besides Pakistan, which country under an IMF program has ever got out of poverty? None. So my bottom line is, no matter how smart we are, how many positive proposals we create, negative, positive, what have you, because that comes out to our debate. It's your debate and it's my debate. But when the IMF comes and gives us diktat based on structural adjustment programs that are anti-growth and austerity focused, there is no solution for us to ever, ever, ever get out of our misery. And I'm telling you, God forbid that one day will come when these people realize what they have done for the global South, and they will find out that they will have to shut the shutters on their windows and say goodbye.
So, okay. Dr. Zishan, quickly.
क्विकली मेरा क्वेश्चन ये है कि एक तो आईएमएफ के हवाले से सर ने तो सारे दिल की भड़ास सबकी निकाल दी। मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ, थैंक यू फॉर डाइसेक्टिंग द बजट, करंट बजट फ्रॉम डिफरेंट पर्सपेक्टिव्स। मैं ये जानना चाहता हूँ कि इस बजट के अंदर जो, जब हम यूनिवर्सिटी में थे तो हमारे टीचर फरमाया करते थे कि 40% ऑफ द पॉपुलेशन इज लिविंग बिलो द पॉवर्टी लाइन, और आज भी 90 से लेकर आज भी हम वही फिगर सुनते आ रहे हैं। तो इस बजट के अंदर उस पॉवर्टी को, जो पॉवर्टी लाइन से नीचे लोग रहते हैं, कितनी परसेंट लोगों को या कितने लाख या कितने हजार लोगों को इस साल में ऊपर लाने का सोचा गया है? एक बात। दूसरा ये है कि इस बजट के अंदर आईएमएफ तो कंडीशंस ले डाउन करता है, जिस तरह मैडम ने कहा। कभी इस बजट के अंदर कोई ऐसी रिफ्लेक्शन हमें मिलती है कि आईएमएफ ने ये कहा हो कि आप अपने अखराजात को गवर्नर हाउस के, पीएम हाउस के, सीएम सेक्रेटरीट की ये बिस्किट खाना कम कर दें, इसको ज़रा आप काइंडली कर्टेल डाउन करें और यहाँ से अपने एक्सपेंडिचर्स में कट लाएं? थैंक यू।
Thank you. I have a comment and a question. If you look at the last ILO report, it says that the size of the economy, Pakistan's economy, is much larger than the $600 billion. It's the ILO report, so it's official, it's public. It includes both formal and informal economy. My question is, we have been debating on the tariffs, import tariffs, like if we reduce the tariffs, most of the problems will be, solved. So we at PIDE we just made a comparison. India has similar tariff structure as Pakistan. Our rates are different. Our rates reduce in the same fashion over the last decade. Bangladesh also has the same tariff structure. Turkey increased tariffs, but they are doing good exports. So my question is reducing tariff enough? Do we need to provide competitive energy for industry like the Vietnam did in Vietnam, or do we need to make better port structure like many other countries did? And what about the financing gap for the SMEs, like what the Bangladesh did in the Grameen Bank? We don't have any SME policy, as Dr. Hina mentioned. That mostly, the government of Pakistan, it goes to banks, commercial banks for financing. Let me share an interesting fact. Last year, the investment to deposit ratio was 98.6%, almost 100%. Government borrowed almost all the deposits from the commercial banks last year. So there was no money available for the SME or any other, private sector. So what are the broader measures for the economy other than the import tariffs only? Thank you.
Good. Dr. Angela, do you have a question?
No, no.
Okay. So let's on the right side. जी गुलाम साहब quickly ताकि online भी कुछ questions ले लें.
जी मेरा क्वेश्चन अली सलमान साहब से, उन्होंने अभी ये एलीट बैशिंग की बात की थी कि हम ये एलीट बैशिंग के टर्म यूज़ करते हैं या ऐसे. मैं थोड़ा सा उससे डिफर करूंगा क्योंकि जो एविडेंस है वो उसके ना अगेंस्ट जाते हैं. लाइक अगर ये अभी खालिद साहब जो उन्होंने दिखाए थे टैक्स एक्सपेंडिचर का भी जो ग्राफ उन्होंने दिखाया था, तो उसमें भी देखें तो टैक्स एक्सपेंडिचर हमारे पिछले साल में कोई तकरीबन 4 ट्रिलियन के करीब थे. अभी जो थे वो कोई तकरीबन 2 पॉइंट समथिंग ट्रिलियन के करीब थे. और इसके अंदर जब इसको ब्रेक डाउन करें तो उसमें देखें सबसे ज़्यादा जो शेयर है वो जाता है उनको एक्सपोर्टर को जाता है हमारे. और अभी मेरी एक स्टूडेंट है, उसने थीसिस कंप्लीट की, हमने इवेल्युएट किया है इसको जो जितनी भी ये टैक्स स्कीम या ज़ीरो रेटेड या इसके, तो हमें उसके ऊपर कोई उनके ना तो उनकी एक्सपोर्ट के ऊपर इम्पैक्ट नज़र आया और उनकी प्रोडक्टिविटी चेक किए, वो आज भी उतने प्रोडक्टिव हैं जितने वो 10-12 साल पहले बिफोर द SRO 11 जो है 2011 है उतनी ही प्रोडक्टिव हैं. तो फिर क्यों ना इसको इंसेंटिवाइज कर दिया जाए उसके साथ उनकी परफॉर्मेंस के साथ. एक तो ये है. और दूसरा में अल्टरनेटिव जो अप्रोचेज़ है जहाँ से हम जो टैक्स के सिस्टम के अंदर इनएफिशिएंसीज है उनको मिनिमाइज करें, लाइक ब्लॉकचेन टेक्नोलॉजी. मैंने कल पेपर यहीं पे प्रेजेंट किया उसके ऊपर, ब्लॉकचेन टेक्नोलॉजी को रियल स्टेट मार्केट के लिए. तो अगर हम उसको ब्लॉकचेन, हम डिजिटाइजेशन की तो बहुत बात करते हैं, वो डिजिटाइजेशन थोड़ी सी अलग चीज़ है, उसके अंदर स्टिल चांसेस ऑफ मैनिपुलेशन जो हैं वो बहुत ज़्यादा है. लेकिन अगर हम ब्लॉकचेन टेक्नोलॉजी को अगर ले आए, उसके अंदर उसको एक सिर्फ अगर रियल स्टेट को ले आए, खासतौर पे अगर इस्लामाबाद को या बड़े सिटी को भी केस स्टडी बना ले, हमारे पास रियल टाइम जो है वो प्राइसेस आ रही होंगी, रियल टाइम उनकी सेल एंड बाइंग जो है उसकी भी इंफॉर्मेशन आ रही होगी, जिसके लिए हमारे पास वेरी इजी टू जो टैक्स कलेक्शन है ऑन द रियल स्टेट जो है वो हम कर सकते हैं. वो भी हमें बहुत सिग्निफिकेंट जो अमाउंट है वो हमें दे सकती है, जिससे हमें जो टैक्स रेट है वो कम करने में, मतलब ये एक अल्टरनेटिव है. तो हमें इस तरह के जो अल्टरनेटिव है उनकी तरफ जाना चाहिए. थैंक यू.
Hello, so my question is to all the panelists कि हम बात करते हैं कि इस बजट पे जो है वो इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ बेसिकली जो है वो सामने रखी गई है और उसके अकॉर्डिंगली बजट बनाए. तो आई वाज जस्ट गोइंग थ्रू द बजट एंड आई रियलाइज दैट हेल्थ केयर को 0.18% एलोकेट किया गया है ऑफ द इंटायर बजट एंड एजुकेशन को 0.64. जब तक ह्यूमन डेवलपमेंट नहीं होगी इकोनॉमिक ग्रोथ कैसे हो सकती है इन द लॉन्ग रन? थैंक यू.
Now let's go online if
Assalamu alaikum ji. My name is Dr. Idris Masood. I have been with the planning department government of KPK for the last 35 years. Presently, I am a full-time researcher at the Area Study Center, University of Peshawar. There are two questions that I have in my mind. Have there been any provisions made in the budget to deal with the external international shocks? What happens if the international trade position worsens? And then there is a problem for us in the exports as it is presently being faced by us and which has been pointed out also by the World Bank because of the tariffs. So that is one point. The second point is how will is there any possibility for our budget to compensate our people against those international shocks that are coming, that are hitting every other country like us and us as well? These are just two
Thank you, Dr.
questions.
Idris. Thank you.
You are okay.
Next.
Mr. Athar sir, please unmute yourself, sir.
Ji, thank you very much. First of all, let me congratulate PIDE, Mahmood, Khalid, and Nadeem Saab for conducting this very important seminar. Let me come down to two concerns. First of all, budget has to be viewed in the context of the economy. Now, stabilization is already there in terms of, we can see in terms of various statistics, debt to GDP ratio, handling of the circular debt, deficit to GDP ratio, current account position, stability, and lowering of inflation rate. So stability के तो जो है वो more or less सारे points जो है वो clear हो रहे हैं. Now the real question is कि what will be the direction taken to promote growth? Number one. Number two, जिस चीज को अभी हमें ज़हन में रखना है वो ये है कि जी के we are a war economy, जो कि हम बिल्कुल भूले हुए हैं. Even though it was a 4-day war, but still it was a war economy last year. And going forward, stability अभी हमारी political as well as जो border की security है उसके issues हैं, उनको सामने रख के there will be some expenditure that will be coming in future as well. तो हमें देखना ये है कि जी ग्रोथ कहाँ से आएगी इस इकोनॉमी के लिए, so that we can we are able to address the issues of unemployment and poverty. और उसके लिए खाली टैरिफ पॉलिसी जो है वो शायद काफ़ी नहीं होगी, उसके लिए हमें इंस्टीट्यूशनल रिफॉर्म्स भी करने की ज़रूरत होगी और मे भी कि हमें एनफोर्समेंट स्ट्रक्चर को भी बेहतर करने की ज़रूरत पड़ेगी. अनलेस और अनटिल न्यू इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन का डायमेंशंस टेक प्लेस, मेरा नहीं ख्याल के जी के फौरी तौर पे ग्रोथ के इसे आ सकती है. इंडस्ट्रियलाइजेशन के लिए कुछ ना कुछ करना पड़ेगा. थैंक यू.
बहुत शुक्रिया सर. So now we have a set of questions which I would like to pose specific to the panelists, which I think is more relevant. We would not like to answer the IMF question because that will be an unending debate. So let this be a comment from your side.
Don't worry, I'm leaving the country in 2 days.
Oh, so you're safe in any case. Okay. Another question was in terms of how much poverty would be reduced if this budget goes out. I think that largely has been discussed by Dr. Safdar Sohail already, that when we think about the cash transfers and other poverty related spending, it's not kind of poverty reduction programs, maybe a kind of a makeshift arrangement. So practically we don't see any poverty going down because of this budget. But the more important question which was asked by Dr. Zishan, and maybe Dr. Ali Salman can highlight this, that the tariff reduction, is this the only way through which we can improve our industrialization and exports? What about the other issues such as the energy gaps, the financing, and so many other things? Quickly, if you can.
जी, I'll be very brief. I think first of all, एक budget के बारे में एक common question हर कोई पूछता है कि जी हमें इससे क्या रिलीफ मिलेगा कॉमन पर्सन को, और वो तो इस पे मेरा आंसर हमेशा यही होता है कि बजट इज़ नॉट अबाउट कॉमन पीपल रिलीफ. बजट इज़ अबाउट अ गवर्नमेंट इकोनॉमी, एंड ऑल वी वांट इज टू गवर्नमेंट to manage its own economy and its own finances in a better and efficient manner. It's not the Pakistan's economy, it's the government own economy which has to be managed. But if it is manages well, तो डेफिनेटली उसके असरात हमें पड़ सकते हैं, लोगों के लिए अच्छा हो सकता है, लेकिन कोई डायरेक्ट उसके आई डोंट सी अ लिंक about poverty and relief measures there. So on the tariff, I think it's a very serious concern. Look, I mean, tariff reforms alone obviously cannot solve all the problems which our economy has been facing. But this is an important part of the puzzle. So, we have, if we allow the trade-off, if we liberalize the trade, I think it will have a positive impact on the production, on the productivity. It will also bring more investment, because let's say energy का जो मसला है, energy अब हमें पता है कि energy इसका मसला है, इस वक्त surplus energy का मसला है, right? So it's actually that we are not able to utilize all the electricity we have. So if the tariff reforms are is able to facilitate more investment and eventually more production, then it will help. It will create that cycle. Also जो भी numbers आए हैं, जो model भी पेश किया गया है गवर्नमेंट में भी, थोड़ा सा पब्लिक भी आया है, एक तो इतनी पब्लिक डिबेट नहीं हुई इसके ऊपर, होनी चाहिए थी, क्योंकि वो numbers इस तरह पब्लिक अवेलेबल नहीं है या पेपर्स उसके ऊपर अवेलेबल नहीं है. तो वो ये सजेस्ट करते हैं कि इससे एक्सपोर्ट्स ज़्यादा तेज़ी से बढ़ेंगी. सो जाहिर है कि दैट इज़ लिंक्ड विद द प्रोडक्शन एंड मैन्युफैक्चरिंग प्रोसेस एट होम. सो आई थिंक it will help many problems, but definitely not all the problems.
I would say that still something is better than nothing.
Yeah.
So at least we are trying to address something. Now, quickly to Dr. Safdar, Sohail, there was a comment made by Ghulam Mustafa in terms of how we should think about the way industries should go about maybe blockchains and the performance-based subsidies, sunset clauses, which could be added in terms of how the packaging is done. And lastly, what Dr. Attar also mentioned, that what's the sense of kind of direction to the growth? Because when we talk about the drivers to the growth in economy, there are sectors, there are elements which can pitch in terms of different sectors. So what do you see in the budgetary perspective? Are we heading towards the right direction?
Thank you.
Is
देखिए, this debate about industrialization in Pakistan, there are some basic questions on the subject. We do not have a formal industrial policy in the country. Now that creates a challenge in the sense कि जी अगर कोई formal policy हो तो पूरा उसका एक infrastructure होता है, उसके review का, उसके analysis का, उसकी funding का. Now we don't have that. And Ministry of Industries and Production, which takes care of the industrial development interventions. Through that, we can build a kind of a model of industrial development model of Pakistan that we have. Now, there, as I said myself, that our data regarding manufacturing in Pakistan is highly problematic. Now, do you work on the presumption that Pakistan has done well in terms of industrial development and we need to do better? Do we start with this, that we do have manufacturing capacity and there's a lot of idle capacity which somehow is there? Or we say that there are some growth vents available, like exports, for example, and we need to have greenfield investments in manufacturing, and we need to promote FDI and domestic investment into manufacturing. Or we say that our policy goal in terms of industrial policy should be to enable Pakistan's manufacturing to meet the latent demand of industrial goods in the country. If that is our primary objective, then what kind of industrial policy we should have? So I have seen the last draft of a new industrial policy that basically goes for three major focus area. One is to facilitate investment. Now that is obviously important. The second is exports, and the third is greening. That's the best way to go it. Now there are a host of issues like industrial development zones, for example. Should we have institutions like NDFC and development finance institutions? What about the funding? Somebody talked about SME development and crowding out. So how do we organize public and private investment, including FDI, towards manufacturing Now, that is at the heart of all the development effort that government is doing. My own understanding in that respect is that this tariff policy in different sectors is going to have different kind of impacts, which we need to study. That which sector, when, for example, nobody would disagree that we need to end the very high protection, let's say, in the auto sector. So only a 4-digit analysis of the possible impact of tariff reductions in particular would tell us more, and then we have to identify the channels there. But if IMF is saying that the new industrial policy has to be fiscally neutral, whatever it means, that basically means that you are only depending on the FDI for the expansion of manufacturing or local investment, private investment. We are not talking about the public investment for, and in my views, if you are not talking about the public investment to give a big industrial boost to the country, then there's no need to have this new industrial policy. There's nothing new. You have a lot of industrial development initiatives at the federal, provincial levels, make them more efficient, and that would help. Thank you.
Thank you. So we close with this, and thank you very much. Now I would like to invite Dr. Nasir Iqbal, who's heading the Macro Policy Lab and also the registrar at PIDE, for the closing remarks and the vote of thanks to the panelists.
And thank you so much, all the panelists. I just especially thank all the panel on behalf of our Vice Chancellor. He has to leave for another assignment, so I apologize that he left a bit earlier. So the question that remained important to us, why we talk about the budget, and that we are emotional in terms of making decisions like IMF is with us, this budget is for poor, this budget is for the welfare of the people. So these are all the emotional talks, and we should be very rational when we talk about the budgets, the narrative of budget and the need of the budget and the need of the economy. Probably what we are missing in this whole context is because on the one hand, it's a mathematical exercise that we have to balance the expenditure as well as the revenue side. But on the other side, what we are delivering from this entire budget, is it the only meant to create a balance, or is meant to create economic activity? So the real question would matter to us, like when we talk about the prosperity of the other countries, what happened to them? The key fundamental is one, the overall productivity of the all kind of the factor, and then the business growth. We always talk about the industrial policy. We always talk about so many things, but where is the business heading in the economy? I just, on the comments that you said, if there is a massive migration from the rural to the urban areas, and there is a lot of ongoing economic activity at the grassroots level, then we must count all those things while happening in this budget and other things like that. And what I wrote a few weeks back, that we should be more focused on promoting business at that grassroots level. The informal economy is the backbone of the entire system. We cannot exclude this the informal economy from our system. We should make our system such way that they should formalize in a much better way. Like we propose an idea that allow them to register business on mobile app with only 2 documents. If you have the CNAC and you have the bank account, if even you don't have the bank account, give them the option with the CNAC, you can register your own business. That kind of like a drastic initiative would basically mean to promote businesses. The facilitation that we are looking for is that kind of environment. Otherwise, what the Mustafa said and what we wrote in uncertainty of this fiscal policy and so many things, these are some kind of, although the hardcore economics things are there, but the real part is how we allow our people to do businesses, and investment should come from our own side. Lastly, I thank all of you people for sparing time for us and discussing very important point. Yeah. I'm also thankful for the online panelists as well. Dr. Sahab, we have a very small token of appreciation for all. Let's join us.